Our brothers and sisters, good evening and welcome to another episode of Touchdown Talk. 17 episodes in already with a different content creator for every one of those. It has been a real wild ride to this point to have the opportunity that I have, and I tell you what, episode 17 is a special one here because aside from seeing Philly.500 to my right side here, the King Dingbat himself, we are getting to the pinnacle. We are hitting mountaintops with this one, and at the same time, honestly, it's a surreal experience for me. Being a younger in terms of not being on the platform as long as I have been 500, and I'm sure the just what you have built over the years on this platform, and understanding that you guys in the company that that you have built, there is a lot of people that watch y'all, and I was one of them before. I even started a channel. So to this point and to have the opportunity to host you on my YouTube channel, it's I'd be lying if I didn't say that it was a little bit of a nerve wracking, but a surreal experience altogether. So it is a pleasure to have you on here, 500. So yeah,
Thank you.
how's your Saturday to this point?
It's been all right. I'm a little bit bored, like
Right.
I'm ready for this football season to get underway. I've been waiting a long time. It seems like it's really dragging out right now. I also had COVID, so it's been kind of a long week. Still kind of recovering from that. Although I didn't really have a lot of like symptoms. The symptoms weren't bad, but like the fatigue over the last few days
Right,
has
yeah.
just been killing me. But other than that, man, I'm doing good, man. Doing good, and I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to come on. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
No, like I said, the pleasure's all mine, and at least it's awesome to hear that you were a little more asymptomatic with COVID.
Yeah.
I personally have had it twice.
Mm.
The first time, I unfortunately lost my taste and smell for about a good 3 months, but
Jeez.
but outside of that, it hasn't really affected me all that much, and I was happy for that. And
Yeah.
before we even came on the show, I had to start the countdown as immediately as I could before before the flames ignited backstage, in which there's a particular number on this jersey that everybody's not a fan of right now, but I will
Right.
say, in terms of that, it is Jeremy Macklin. It is not Jalen Rager. So
There you go.
we'll get that out of the way first. I was close to being put under a huge fire. We'll just
Right.
say that, everybody. And
Yeah.
welcome to the five people in the chat already. Angel 3, BPS, and Big Play Slay. Randall is in here. Good to see y'all on this Saturday evening, everybody. And then, well, I have a little bit of surprise here. I was out doing some shopping and whatnot, and I am a gamer backstage, and through all this, and I'll do some gaming streams every now and then. So I kind of like the classic stuff. I still have my PS2 and that, so I ended up finding a racing game on there. But
Hmm.
the same store actually sells sports cards too. So I seen this and I had to pick it up. We got ourselves a rookie Shady
Look at
McCoy
that.
with a piece of a
Shady.
jersey in
That's
there.
right. Yeah, back when he was number 29. I remember
Right?
that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
I had to.
Yeah.
I found this. I couldn't pass it up, so that is going to go with the rest of the display up there, right next to Reggie White. But
There you
no,
go.
man, I was excited to find that it was a good deal. But
Yeah, that's cool.
before I destroy my voice blabbering for the next 5 minutes, we got some stuff to address here in terms of Eagles football, and being that 500 and I have not formally worked together. This is the very first time, and well, although I have seen plenty of your videos assessing what the Eagles have done in this draft class and
Hmm.
the magnitude of excitement that they have brought up to this point
Yeah.
and making the AJ Brown trade, getting two of those Georgia Bulldogs off the championship team and taking a quote unquote chance on the Kobe Dean. Jordan Davis is here. Kyron Johnson late in that class, Grant Calcaterra. There's we're not in a position of looking at a piece of Swiss cheese. So it seems
Hmm.
this year compared to last year with what we have done in terms of the draft. And we go into this year. Training camp is around the corner. I have to imagine you have. Such a high sense of excitement going into this 500. So, I mean, where are you at right now
Yeah.
with how the team looks?
Oh, I mean, if you look at this team from a year ago and just what they did this all season, I mean, I don't know how this is not one of the most exciting all seasons that I can remember. And it's not just a situation where it's like, well, they're all in now to win this year. I mean, they're really building something over the course of the next 5, 6 years. If you look at pretty much most of their moves, right? Well, except for maybe Tart, Bradbury, but most of the moves, a lot of them are for the long term. The Jordan Davis, the N'Kobe Dean, the AJ Brown, 25 years old. These guys are going to be the centerpiece of this team for a long time. So I think that there's a lot to be excited about in terms of this team, not just going into this year, but over the next 4 or 5 years.
And we seen going through that, and the AJ Brown trade was one of the most polarizing, and getting a proven receiver in the league already with multiple 1,000-yard seasons, Pro Bowls to his name, and then you just look at the intangible part of it and say, oh, okay, well, him and
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts are best friends off the field,
Can
and
can
and
can I say
that
something real
just
quick? Can I
sure.
say something real quick? I see that moron Big Play Slay is saying stupid shit, so I've got to correct him. He says that
Oh
I said
no.
we would trade for DK. I didn't say we would trade for DK. What I said was that DK Metcalf was possibly on the trade block, as well as Debo Samuel, as well as AJ Brown. If I'm the Eagles, I said this 1,000 times. I would call one of those three teams and see which one would do a deal, and then I would do that deal. That's all I said.
Right.
I didn't say they're going to trade for DK. Oh, they're going to trade for Debo. I was saying all three of those guys are potentially on the block. DK was the first one to get rumored, then Debo, then AJ. I said that you have to call each team and make an offer. What did they do with the 49ers? They called and they made the same offer for Debo Samuel as they did AJ Brown. That's what I said they should do. That's what they did. So big play Slay, get your facts right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's all good, but I mean, how often do we hear this anyway? And in the rumors, the rumors don't even just involve the Eagles, and now you got the conversations talking about DK Metcalf to the Dallas Cowboys, and I
Right.
personally can't picture that. Like there's no way that you're going to not. Be able to keep CD Lamb or any kind of asset.
Right.
I mean, it's a receiver for a receiver scenario there. First of
Yeah.
all, Seattle is not going to want to give him to another NFC, another team in the conference like the NFC. Usually, you see that from NFC to AFC. First of all, depending on the player. Secondly, they're going to want something. They're going to want something in return, especially with them going through a quarterback change and the departure of Russell Wilson. So now they're sitting there
Mhm.
with Drew Lock and whoever else that they want to put in competition, that they're going to want to keep as many playmakers on that team as possible. And you dump DK, and then all he's going to have left is Tyler Lockett in the receiving corps, unless you want to throw some other players into the mix that are good down the depth chart. But
Right.
rumors are rumors, and something like
Yeah.
that, it just doesn't seem all that possible from a logical standpoint. It sounds like it's just something to scare the rest of the NFC East, as far as
Well,
I'm
it
concerned.
scares me though. It would scare me though. And big play Slate, you're good, man. You're all good. We're good. I like big play Slay. Um, I think he's a very knowledgeable kid. I like him a lot. But what was I saying? Oh, that would scare me though. If the Cowboys
Hmm.
added DK Metcalf, that would scare me. I think you're right. I think it's unlikely. However, you got to wonder what Seattle and DK Metcalf with the contract extension. Same thing with Debo. I mean, these guys
Right.
obviously want to get paid. I mean, the Eagles, man, you got to give them credit. They were able to get AJ Brown, and if you could have gotten one of those three guys, you really set yourself up, and they did exactly that. You know.
And I mean, it makes sense on the end of Dallas. They lose Cedric Wilson, they lose Amari Cooper. Michael
Hmm.
Gallup may not be ready at the start of the season. You move CeeDee Lamb to the number one spot, and then you have between those two, they still have some promising. They still have some promising. I think they have a promising rookie receiver. They have a year two guy out of Stanford that's like a 6'4", 225 type of build. I can't remember his name at this point. And,
I
well,
don't know.
Stanford players aren't in good memory right now as
Yeah,
far as we're concerned for
right.
for the Eagles.
Not
But
wide
yeah,
receiver. No. Well, yeah, they lost Amari Cooper. Then you got Gallup coming back from ACL.
yeah,
That usually takes a year to come back from. So he may come back week 3 and be able to play, but will he be 100%? They got
right.
James Washington. So I don't know that Dallas. I don't think they're going to have the firepower that they have. But if they were to add a guy like a DK, just hypothetically, I think it would go a long way to help that offense going. I do like CeeDee Lamb, and I think he'll have a good year, but he is not the third receiver now. He's the number one wide receiver. He's the number one target.
Absolutely. So he's going to face, the number one corners more often,
Yeah.
respectfully so. And then
Yeah.
you look at Ezekiel Elliott trying to have a bounce back year, and even still, when people want to talk about him having a quiet year last year, I think he still rushed for
Yep.
over 1,300 yards. So, but I think to his standards, with him having the explosive rookie year that he did coming out of the Ohio State and what he meant to that Cowboys offense, I think that's why it seemed quiet, because Dallas is another team that loves to run the football. So, they want their number one on the field as much as possible. Now, granted, they still have
Yeah.
Tony Pollard, which a lot of Cowboys fans were trying to debate whether they would, start Pollard at this point over Zeke because of, concerns of injury or the tread on Ezekiel's tires. Is it getting balder? Is he still the same Zeke? And all
Yeah.
those questions. But if you look at it, if Dallas is in a position where if they can get that run to pass balance again, where they're keeping the football out of Dak's hands more times than not, then I think that's where most of our competition is going to come from, so long as the Cowboys stay consistent in that regard, since they always seem to be that team that we try to measure ourselves to, when we're not considering Washington and the New York Football Giants.
Right. Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting. And I'll tell you this, I know that they're supposed to be run first team. I just wonder that Mike McCarthy cannot help himself but wanting to go to a passing game. I mean, think back with Green Bay. I mean, they never had a running game with Green Bay. So, yeah, I don't know that Zeke's still the same player he was. You know what I mean? I think Pollard's better at this point. Better back. I don't know if Zeke's the same guy he was. It's to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
But if you
And I
really look
think,
at Dallas, though, no, if you look at Dallas, right, and if Zeke
yes.
isn't the same running back he was, you lose the offensive wide receivers, and then that offensive line is not as good as it was a year ago either. So I think there's questions for Dallas offensively. I definitely do.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Tyron Smith is supposed to be coming back healthy. Zach Martin is still Zach Martin. He's just a little bit older. He's still
Yeah,
regarded as one of the best guards in all of football.
yeah, he is.
I believe. no, I don't exactly remember who they lost, but in regards to that, yeah, I mean, they're gonna have their they're gonna have their quirks that they have to work around. I mean, BPS brings up the Tyler Smith pick, and while they were kind of in a position to select an offensive lineman that early, I think the issues with Tyler Smith is that he's a little bit raw for his position. There's word about him getting cross trained, so who knows how far that goes. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think Dallas has a Jeff Stoutland on their coaching staff
Right.
to where it could
Right.
be a more seamless
Yeah.
transition that way. But of course it comes down to the talent level of the player as well. And we have we have seen to this point that with every offensive lineman that we've brought in, it hasn't necessarily worked. I.e., Andre
Right.
Dillard. He hasn't had the versatility that we were hoping for. That experiment kind of failed. But as we know so far, he bulked up a little bit. He's going to try and cross train at a
Yeah.
guard spot. And, well,
That's scary.
what's the word I'm looking for?
Scary, but
Um,
necessary though. It's necessary.
yes.
Like if he could play multiple positions, it would greatly increase his value to this team.
Yep.
So I have no problem with them giving it a try. I don't know if he can play guard, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, value to
You
this
know,
team and or value to another team if he becomes a trade asset. And I know
that's
in your
right.
recent videos with the situation with Jesse Bates, it's not looking good over there in Cincinnati. And
No,
and whether it's been Jesse Bates to this point, Marcus Williams, we were this close to snatching him up,
close.
and he chose the Baltimore Ravens. As
Yep.
far as we were concerned, the money was the same, but he decided to go with Baltimore. And then when you date back to the draft, you had guys like Kyle Hamilton, Jaquan Brisker,
Hmm.
Jalen Petre was a favorite of mine that I wanted the Eagles to select it, and well, none of that worked. So
Right. Right.
we go into this offseason with the safety core that, well, I think still leaves a good amount to be desired, but they are, they give me a 2017 esque type of vibe where we had a high appreciation of depth on this football team and
Hmm.
the capabilities and skill sets of some of these players. So now, granted, we do technically have two strong safeties right now between Jaquaski Tart and Anthony Harris, but that's not to say that we will be in situations where we'll have to see the second string. You have more bodies on special teams, and while we're segueing from the Dallas Cowboys to the Eagles, because we are Eagles content creators, but we do have to keep our
Right.
eye on the NFC East as well.
Oh yeah.
So I think to this point, 500, we need to do some digging on our own team before we try to start to criticize somebody else. It's only
Right.
fair. So
Right.
let's get into this. And where I want to personally start
Hmm.
before we analyze training camp assessments on who we want to look at, the position groups that are going to be the most exciting to watch. Um, we need to look at it from a statistical standpoint last year to what the Eagles were able to accomplish. Now, on paper, you see that the Eagles as a team were 12th in scoring overall. They were the 18th ranked defense. Now, yeah, that's two positions below average, but they were close to average. Now, again, I said on paper. Paper doesn't
Right.
tell you the whole story unless you watch the
True.
games. And as you go across it, and as we went through the 2021 season, and it was especially weeks 1 through 7 where Sirianni had to decide at the end of that, that there needed to be a more of a transition from pass to run. As you look, Atlanta Falcons, they weren't much of a challenge at all. We had 434 yards of total offense in that one. We were able to rush the ball for over 170 yards. Another notable game, week 7, the Las Vegas Raiders, a game we should have won. We still ran for 135 yards. Um, And then week 2 against San Francisco, it was a 6-point game. We still ran for 150 yards. So, there is a little bit of a misconception there, in my opinion, on the intensity of saying that the Eagles threw the football a lot. Well, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. I think it more comes down to Jalen Hurts statistically, and if you look at him through a deeper microscope, you understand that he attempted almost 9.5 rushes a game. I mean, he was at 9.3 a
Mm,
game in terms of
right.
running the football. So the as we know, the theme going into this season is we want him to stay in the pocket a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for me, the pass attempts that he had last year, he averaged about 29. In terms of the prototypical passing quarterback, it's not exactly ideal. You want to see
Right.
a guy that's in the low to mid 30s or high 30s to low 40s, depending on the defensive matchup that you have on a weekly basis, how your game plan is going to diagnose that team from an offensive standpoint. But when you look at the hard numbers for what Jalen Hurts did last year, he didn't throw the ball a whole lot over the course of 15
Mm-hmm.
games. Like I said, his pass attempts were about 29. So if you think about it, if you take at least half of his rushes away, well, that boosts him to about 33, which is a pretty even number across the board. So in that facet, when you look at it, in terms of Jalen Hurts, in terms of Jalen Hurts throughout training camp, that's going to be the biggest thing to me. Is I want to see him go through a deeper structure of passing, working on his passing and hitting
Right.
the routes with the receivers that he has. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, Dallas Goddard. There's too many weapons now to ignore them
I
on the
agree.
field and
I agree.
in a stance of, okay, well, if I don't like the play call, I'm going to immediately bail. I don't think that's
Yeah.
going to be the case anymore, especially the fact that Shane Steichen is now going to be your primary play caller. Takes a little bit of stress off of Nick Sirianni. Um, but overall, when we assess Jalen Hurts going into training camp, aside from some of my gripes, what are the biggest things that you are wanting to see 500?
Well, I mean, from a complete offensive standpoint, I do want to see the rushes cut down. I don't want to see him run quite as much. So I expect that the offensively, I expect him to be a pass more than run. I think that's a good sign of his development. What I want to see is I want to see him be able to stand in the pocket and make his reads, throw with accuracy, and lead guys to where he wants them to go. Throw to the spots. Oftentimes, we saw Jalen Hurts last year where he's in the pocket, the read ain't there where he goes once, and he bails to his right. As soon as it's not there,
Mhm.
he goes to his right. I want to see him stand in the pocket more. I thought he started to do that at the second part of the season. Kind of got away from
Mhm.
it with that Tampa Bay game, but I thought that Chargers game was the first game where it looked like he was actually standing in the pocket more. So if I can see more of that from him, I think he's got enough weapons that listen, if he's not throwing an accurate pass here or there, you have guys like AJ Brown who I think can make up for that. So I want to see less running. I want to see him stay in the pocket. I want to see better mechanics. I want to see him be able to win games with his arm. Not all the time. It doesn't have to be like Peyton Manning or Brady, but he's. I want a team. I want this team to be a pass first team. Now I'm not saying don't be balanced. You can still keep your
Mhm.
balance, but I want to see more throws, less rushes, less designed rushes from him, and more throwing.
Right. So going into it for me, I'm hoping for a kind of 60-40 balance
Yeah.
between the pass and the run. And there was a lot of cases where I felt that they weren't using the effect of motion enough. And
Right.
another reason AJ Brown is here is that you're going to give a guy like Devontae Smith a lot of opportunity for free releases. You're going to be able to put him in motion. You're going to be able to better dissect the defense. Hurts can better identify what's going on, and through some of those easy nuances.
Hmm.
And another thing that I want them to take advantage of is utilizing play action. I don't think we
Oh
seen that
yeah.
very. I don't think we seen that very much enough last year,
Yeah.
especially when you have a Pro Bowl esque type of tight end in Dallas Goddard, who,
Yeah.
a little side gripe of mine. ESPN recently came out with a top 10
Yeah.
list of tight ends, and they had Kyle Pitts ahead of Dallas Goddard at number 5, and Goddard was
I
6.
saw
So
that. Yeah,
after
I
one
saw that.
year, I get it. Kyle Pitts was phenomenal
Yeah.
after the Eagle after week 1 against us. He was phenomenal. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. But I'm not going to vault him all the way to top 5 after just one season, because it's a what have you, of course we know it's a what have you done for me lately league. You have to continue to update your resume. Is he going to have any kind of slump as a sophomore going into this season with the changes that the Falcons have gone
Yeah.
through? Granted, he now has another dynamic playmaker with him and Drake London. Now, again, don't get me wrong with that, but I don't know how um, stable or sustainable they are going to be at the quarterback position. So that's yet to be seen.
Right.
But yeah, that's my little that was my little thing with the
Well,
tight end list that I seen.
I
I
think
didn't agree
Goddard's
with
going to
it.
have a monster year. I think he's going to have a monster year. Um, I think Dallas Goddard is going to have a lot of space to operate, and I agree with you. I think play action is huge for this team. No question about it. I'm really curious of that third wide receiver spot because I'm
Hmm.
not sure what their plan is with Rager. Like, I don't want, like, to me, Rager's the fifth, sixth best receiver on this team. But because he's a first round pick making the money that he makes, are they going to try to force him into this offense? If you look last year, there were times where they almost game planned to get Rager involved more than they did Devontae Smith. And I thought it was a huge mistake. I would like to see Quez Watkins be your third receiver. I really would. And I would like to see spots where they put A.J. Brown in the slot and put Quez on the outside. I want to see those guys move all over the place. But I really am curious what their plan is with that third receiver because I would like to see Quez get it. You also got Zach Pascal. And I'm not sure where they're at with Rager. I think if Rager's on this roster, I think they're going to try to early on in the year to make him the third receiver because of where he was picked and because of what he makes money wise.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. I'm in the middle of trying to find something here quick to prove another point that kind of that I think will irritate people a little bit when you bring up the idea of Jalen Rager and not knowing what we are going to have for him going forward. And this is my thing. So as I'm in the middle of finding it right now, because this is one aspect that I just don't understand. Here it is. So Greg Ward Jr. Where did he go in this offense? I don't
Disappeared.
understand it. I
Yeah.
mean, they almost forced their hand in trying to make Rager work, and
Yep.
of course, there's justification there on their end in terms of the front office that
Right.
they spent a first round pick on this guy. They got to try and get him going, yada yada. But you go from 2020 or even 2019. 2019 I think is a better example because 2020 was the dumpster fire that it was.
Hmm.
We don't have to revisit that, but nonetheless, 2019, Greg Ward Jr. had a snap count percentage offensively of 58%. You want to take a guess what it was for 2021? That Sirianni could not find a way to utilize this
18%.
guy.
18%.
You were close. 22.
22. Okay.
22%. That's
Wow.
the only amount of time that you've seen Greg Ward on the field, and it just seemed that there was really no role for him. So in terms of Greg Ward, offensively, and he's always had this benefit to me in being a former quarterback from Houston and understanding where he needs to best be in terms of route running, and understanding on how to pick his points in soft spots of zone coverage, or knowing how to climb on a corner and hit the best spot and be open for his quarterback. And and a guy like Rager, for as spotty as he's been, he hasn't been able to display those types of qualities that a first round pick should have. And
Right.
Greg Ward went undrafted as a quarterback, and he ended up not being a quarterback in this league anymore.
Yeah.
So to not use or not find a way to use an asset like that, because Greg Ward is an asset in his own capacity. I don't think it's to the level of 2018 and a guy like who was it, Press Taylor, or the receivers coach, and not being able to use Golden Tate. I don't think it's to that kind of capacity. But
Right.
To watch Sirianni not end up finding a role that Greg Ward can fit in outside of fair catch special teams, it was disappointing.
Fair catch. I think. I think because I think that Ward was a better receiver. He's a better slot receiver than Rager, and I talked about this last year. Like, put him in. But the problem is, and when you deal with first round picks and guys making so much money on their team, you're going to have to justify to the front office why they're not playing. And I think that the whole Rager thing, I think a lot of that has to do with the front office forcing Sirianni's hand to play Rager, to get Rager going, to give him the snaps. He's your first round pick. He's making how much money, right? And I think we're going to see the same thing early on in the season or in camp, where they're going to want Rager to be that third guy. And I don't think he will do it. I don't think he's good enough. But a lot of things like that's got to do with how much the guy's making and where he was drafted, to be honest.
Unfortunately, I think the easy bet here is that he's going to be a bigger camp hero than he is a regular season hero with the one hand.
Yeah, he'll make a great catch at practice, right? And we'll all get excited, and then he'll do nothing. I mean, he could be a camp casualty. Like, it would not surprise me if they cut him. Like, if it goes that bad. I mean, well, I think at this point, I think the dead money hit's only like $1.5 million.
Yeah.
So it's not that much money. And what are they, to keep him on the roster? Where are they gonna pay him? Like $8 million? I forget what his cap is if he's on the roster. But I mean, I don't know. I think Rager is one of those guys that, because of where he was picked and what he makes, the front office is going to want him to play and be effective. And I hope that doesn't take away from Pascal, from Quez, or from Greg Ward or anybody else.
Now, do you not think that Rager going deeper into training camp is going to create any kind of trade value for, as we know, a lot of teams could get into positions where players unfortunately get hurt. They lose depth at a certain position. Rager can provide things, one-dimensionally, since he has a lot of problems overall as a receiver, and he seems to be a one-dimensional type of guy, and where he can be featured on, quick motion jet sweeps, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe
but even when they tried to use him in certain things like that, he didn't do much.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't even very effective, at least the way the Eagles did it. Now, I don't know. I mean, see, I think there's a way to beef up a guy's trade value. Like if you look at what the Eagles did with Ertz, right? Ertz was coming into last year where, he was considered older, banged up, and there was a lot of question about his trade value. But he came in,
Yes.
he worked hard, they built him up, and then they traded him. Can Rager come in, stay off the social media, be in shape and not fail his physical, not have
Hmm.
meltdowns, not have these problems, and build up his trade value? That's the question, because I think you probably could build his trade value up if he handles it right. And that I don't know.
That's the only justification I feel that could be believable to this point on whether or not he works out in making the 53, because you already know right then and there they're not going to put a first round pick on the practice squad. They're not going to designate
No,
him to the practice squad
no,
whatsoever.
right,
So at that point they're either going to try and make him work on the 53,
right,
or I don't even see them having him cut, because as a first round pick they're going to want to try and get something for him, even
right.
if it's as low as a seventh, or
Seven, a
even
future seventh, like a
right,
2025 seventh.
or
Yeah,
or
might.
maybe a conditional sixth. That's, I mean, you watch
Yeah.
and granted this is a completely different situation, but you watch for how low of a value Baker Mayfield went to the
Oh my
Carolina
gosh.
Panthers, and what the Panthers gave up for Sam Darnold in the
Right.
previous seasons, like how
Right.
much his value drastically dropped.
Yeah.
So you never know. Rager could be in a similar situation, but
But also, I mean, Baker Mayfield didn't do the Browns any favors, right? Saying he
right,
wants out,
yes,
he doesn't want to play. You really kill the trade value. If you look at like the way the Eagles and Zach Ertz handled it, I thought they played
hmm
it perfectly, and they built up value and trade and got something for it. I have a hard time believing that Jalen Rager is like on this roster as the fifth receiver. Like I don't think that they're going to keep him if that's the case either. I think if he's on the roster, they're going to push for him to be the third receiver. And if he's not the third receiver, I think they're going to either try to trade him, like you said, for a seventh round pick in 2092, or they're going to cut him, I think it'll be one of those two things.
So I mean, in terms of the receiver core and what he is, well, maybe legitimately up against here. We already know that Sirianni has brought in one of his guys in
No,
Zach Pascal. You have Deion Kane here that was trying to make some waves
that's
in
true.
OTAs. John Hightower seemed to have gone on the back burner. I
Yeah,
know he wasn't
yeah,
I know he didn't have a lot of favoritism amongst the fan base, because he had the issues with commitment. He had a
mhm,
maturity problem, much like in a way that people were talking about Quez Watkins a little bit. And I remember watching older videos, and a guy like Jason Avant talking about this, where he felt that Quez and Hightower were in similar situations, but over the course of a couple of seasons, he watched Quez go through that kind of maturity, and
mhm,
it just never seemed to have clicked as early with Hightower as it did with Quez. So I mean, and that's scary to think about when you're putting Jalen Rager in the conversation. Further down the depth chart like that, especially with those two speedsters in Britton Covey and Devin Allen that we brought into
mhm.
which, well, Devin Allen qualified for the semifinals today because he won another 110
I
110
saw
meter
that.
hurdle.
Yeah, I
So he
saw
won
that.
another one. I think he was the only American
Yeah,
in that group of 10, and he ended up advancing to the semifinals. So
yeah,
congratulations to him.
definitely. Yeah.
Uh, but when you look at it that way, and we're just talking about this from a pure receiver value, we're not putting
Right,
special teams into the conversation,
right,
which was the worst phase of the Eagles last year. And I think it goes to say that a lot of times people don't appreciate special teams enough,
right.
because It could be, it could be a big gain to put you into enemy territory. It could be that special teams touchdown that really turns the tide of a football game. And the Eagles never really managed to get a grasp on some more positive plays there. Like there was just a lot of there was a lot of Greg Faircatch Ward. There was a there was a lot of minimal progress
Yeah,
from Boston Scott.
yeah.
Jalen Rager became unplayable there from the amount of fumbles he
That
had.
that that was that's probably one of the most disappointing things about Rager to me. Is I
Right.
thought coming out of college he was going to be good in special teams, good on punt returns and kick returns. He's not. He just isn't.
No, I think that was one of the biggest things that elevated his value in that draft class
Yeah,
coming out of TCU because
yeah,
people recognized what he was doing. Aside from having almost 4 or 5 different quarterbacks because they
yeah,
had no stability
yeah,
there.
yeah.
But it's yeah we
My, my,
if I continue that conversation
yeah.
we're
Well, I
we're,
mean,
we're
my thing
maintaining
with
the
Rager,
sanity here.
I think a lot of the issues with Rager are mental. Like if you look at some of the
Sure.
positive plays he's had, it's when he has that not had the time to think about what's going on and just react.
Hmm.
You look at the punt return where he fumbled, he had to pick it up and go. There was another short punt last year where he didn't have time to think about it and he just went. There was I think a wide receiver screen early. I think it was against Atlanta week 1,
Oh
where it
yeah,
seems
yeah.
like when he doesn't think about it and just plays,
Yep.
he's got talent, but he's looks like he's always in his head to me. You know,
Right. Yeah. Before we continue to create a punching bag here with players that aren't necessarily in our favor right now, and
right?
I'm not even going to sweat and trying to bring up Mr. Umbrella Man because
Oh God,
I
yeah,
know I'm not. I made a video about it. I'm not going to do it because I did not quite close the door on Ortega Whiteside. I will admit that I didn't. Although when you make a positional change, it's kind of your last resort in trying to make a football team if you didn't work at the position you were drafted at. And I kind of tried to create a small example on how he could work. And you remember Trey Burton from 2017,
sure,
and
yeah,
those two are of similar build right now. They
hmm
come in at 6'2", about 240, and Trey, despite only playing about 26% of the snaps, he was just an extra receiver on the field, and he proved to be critical in a lot of big moments. Aside from throwing the pass to Nick Foles in the Philly special, I
right,
mean that Rams game was something else. I mean
yeah,
he had a safety and a linebacker on him. It didn't matter. He was bullying whoever was in coverage against him, and it's just a shame to think that a guy in Ortega Whiteside can't bring himself to that kind of level, especially being a second round pick. And when you're talking about Trey Burton, he was undrafted. He came to
right,
this team as an undrafted rookie.
right.
So that was the best comparison that I could make in which something could work with JJ.
hmm
But
I hope,
it's all on him, and it's on the tight ends coach because I really
yeah,
trust Jason Michael. He has done a great job with that group of guys that he has. But you know, as much as he was up against it at the wide receiver position, Arthur Whiteside is still going to be there at tight end with the guys
right.
that they have brought in.
Yeah. Well, and he's going to have, if he's going to be successful as a tight end, it's going to be as a receiving tight end. I know a lot of people
Yes,
always talk about his blocking, but you're talking about defensive ends and linebackers now. It's a little different. He's going
right.
to have to be a good receiving tight end if he makes it. And I'm under, and I've gotten flack for this, but I still think that the Eagles could use another tight end. I don't think there's any clear cut tight end number 2. Maybe
Hmm.
Calcaterra will develop. I mean, we'll see. He hasn't played one snap yet.
Right.
Stahl, I'm not that high on. Richard Rodgers never stays healthy. So, you know, I still think that tight end, another tight end is important. So if Whiteside could be like Trey Burton, that would be a huge addition, you know. I can't count on it, but I hope the position change helps him a lot. You know, and we'll see.
it just, I don't know. It just makes too much sense to me sometimes when I think about it and closing the door. Because if we remember that year, going back to 17, Trey Burton was the third tight end on the depth
Right.
chart. He was number three to where you had Ertz. Brent Selleck was still there, I think a year
Yeah.
before he ended up retiring. And then Trey Burton was the third tight end. He only played about
But
26%
he
of the
caught,
snaps
but he
all
caught the
year.
ball. But I remember the thing
Absolutely.
with Trey Burton playing and going, that guy's not that bad. I haven't
No.
looked at a Whiteside play and gone, that guy ain't that bad.
No,
So,
yeah, there's
I,
no
you know,
not connecting. Absolutely not.
right. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe changing to tight end will help him. I sure hope so. I'd rather him be successful and the position change helps him than not. So I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't. What was it? So it's Ertz, and then it's Ertz and Ortega-Whiteside, who are the two most recent notables out of Stanford. We gotta kind of break a negative there. So
Well,
I mean, that's
yeah,
why I titled my video "The Saving Grace for J Jaw," if there is one. That's the
right,
only saving grace that I could think of. It's like
right,
you're at the bottom of the barrel. There's there's one
right.
piece of paper left in there, like one final idea. And, unfortunately,
Yeah,
that's where he is as a Philadelphia Eagle. And that very well may be where he is as an NFL player. We don't know to
yeah.
this point.
No,
But, well, wow. I can't believe 47 minutes have already passed. And,
right.
before we get any further, of course, and I put this in the description as well. I don't know how anybody doesn't know about Philly 500 to this point. Being one of the biggest foundation pieces in Eagles content creators.
Thank you.
Like across the board, man. There's role model esque qualities to that as well. But I'm not gonna continue on, like a smoozer, a smoozer,
No,
whatever.
you're
But
good.
basically, for basically, I don't know how you don't know about Philly 500 to this point. But again, his channel link is in the description, and you know, make sure you're giving him the support that he deserves.
Thank
So
you. Appreciate that.
before before this stream gets even closer and closer to its closing, we got to go over this depth chart a little bit,
Okay.
and in terms of what the best position groups to look at in training camp. And for as much as we talked about offense to this point, we did not address the defense
Mm-hmm.
necessarily.
Okay.
So I mean, when you go across the board, statistically, from a defensive standpoint, I mean, they did have some decent numbers. But the worst numbers were the hardest to talk about. The defense was 31st in forcing fumbles. They were second to last. Turnovers wise, they were 26th. Rushing touchdowns allowed, they were 23rd. Starting field position, they were 19th. And you
Mm,
you just keep going on and on and on. And while while last year's defense, it left a lot to be
right.
desired. But at the same time, it's still hard to wrap my head around the idea on what the Eagles front office has done, in the magnitude of players that they have brought in. And I haven't seen this for a Jim Schwartz type of defense. And, Jonathan Gannon, year two defensive coordinator, he seems to have gotten more than Jim Schwartz really
Yeah.
ever did.
Yep.
So when you look at it that way, I mean, they have to have a lot of they either have to have a lot of faith in this guy, or they are setting the defense up for it to be an easy transition if Gannon doesn't end up working out next year.
Right.
So, but there's a lot of players to talk about defensively.
Yeah.
You go with and yeah, you're
No, no.
you were
I
about to
was
say
go-
something, so go ahead.
well. I was going to say if you go over, like, if you look at the statistics you're going over, especially defensively, like a lot of that has to do because of the Eagles' inability to get pressure on a quarterback. When you get
Yes.
pressure on a quarterback, you force fumbles, you can force turnovers. All that to me is connected. on getting pressure to the quarterback. That to me is where this defense has to get better first and foremost. And going out and getting Hassan Reddick to me was a huge move in doing that, right? And one of the
Absolutely.
things we saw Jonathan Gannon say a lot was kind of, I don't have the personnel to do what I need to do. So what we have to hope is now that he's brought in Hassan Reddick, and I know he wants to play a hybrid defense. He's got to be way more aggressive on the quarterbacks. If you look at some of these quarterbacks like Mahomes and Derek Carr, they were throwing over 80% completion percentages during games against us. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And my biggest question on this team is Jonathan Gannon. I do not know what to expect from him. I know that the Eagles put him in a position to either fail or succeed because they went out, they got themselves a pass rusher, a guy with double-digit sacks on two different teams. They got another corner. They got a safety. I think the linebacking core is dramatically different than it was a year ago. So to
Yes.
me, there's no excuse for Jonathan Gannon, but it's got to start with getting to the quarterback. They've got to be much better. And if they're better at that, then all those other statistics of fumbles and to me, all that stuff goes up, you know?
Right. And I think when you add a moving brick wall in Jordan Davis
Right.
to be a nose, and you put him in there in the middle of Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, Hassan Reddick comes over here, and you go down the depth chart. People are expecting something from Milton Williams, a second year guy.
Yeah.
Marlon Tui Pelotu, somebody that has went to the wayside a little bit because he was nursing a hamstring
Yeah.
injury. He was supposed to be a contributor into the run defense, and that's one big thing that he is known for coming out of USC. You go down the list. Brandon Graham is making his comeback.
That's huge.
There's a lot of positivity that he looks like as if the Achilles did not happen to him,
Yeah.
and and it's amazing to that aspect. And we
Yeah.
watched Brandon Brooks go through two of those, and and how difficult at times it had to and that he had to come back from that, the amount of difficulty at times there was,
Yeah.
but he continued to persevere until he wasn't able to no more. And we all wished him a happy retirement on that end. Lane Johnson with his ankle injury. So anything involving the feet, when you're an offensive lineman or defensive lineman, like the amount of push and the amount of inertia and energy that's going through your body from the bottom up, just to imagine blowing, like, destroying your Achilles like that. And BG coming back and looking the way he is right now as if nothing happened. It's
Right.
remarkable. And
Yeah.
I really hope that he gets back to 100%, because the Eagles are going to need him by far. um,
Yeah.
but if I look at Jonathan Gannon here, and like I said, it still amazes me in the amount of players that the Eagles front office gave him over Jim Schwartz, and in him trying to help prove himself in being a reputable defensive coordinator, until I hear, I think it was months ago, there was a recent press conference going on, and I think it was during OTAs and everything, and people are asking him about this move and that move and what the Eagles have done, and what he likes and what he doesn't, until somebody gets to a question about, well, are we going to see any schematic changes? And he's like,
Hmm.
nope. Nope, the
Yeah.
defense is going to
I
stay the
know.
same. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding
Scares
me.
me. That scares me.
Because
Well,
he comes into
I'm hoping he's just not wanting to say anything, you know?
Right, that too. I'm because he comes in last year, and he's boasting about this hits principle, and we're gonna force turnovers, we're gonna do this, we're going to look
Right.
like an aggressive, nasty defense, and well, it ended up being a lot of the opposite. They were vanilla, they were conservative,
Yeah.
but at times, for as much gripe we gave with Jim Schwartz, he did have his limitations based on personnel, and well,
Yeah.
there was a lot of that Jonathan Gannon had to go through, being what he was given from the start or
Right.
injuries to key players. But now, well, the pressure is absolutely on for
Yeah.
everybody that everybody that they have brought in. They have two legitimate starting corners. You have depth at safety. The linebackers have been dramatically improved.
Dramatically.
You look at N'Kobe Dean and him being the future Mike linebacker of this team, and
Hmm.
I want to
Yeah.
see him. I want to see him create such a commanding presence out there
Yeah.
at the second level of that
Me
defense.
too.
And
Yeah.
you have to imagine that we're going to see it sooner rather than later. Him being a third round pick. You look at Kaiser White, Davion Taylor's coming back healthy.
TJ
What
Edwards
was
was probably our best
yes.
linebacker last year.
Yes.
You know.
I can't. I don't remember. I don't remember a recent time of the amount of excitement that I have had for an Eagles football team like this.
Yeah.
It's remarkable to what they have done. But
Yeah.
again, like AJ Brown has been doing with some of the guys in the receiving core, and well, Miles Sanders specifically, in trying to tone them tone them down a
Yeah.
little bit.
Right.
We haven't shown anything. Let's take it a day at a time. Jalen
Right.
Hurts has taken the same approach, which you got to love that from a guy
Yeah.
that is really taking that leadership mentality to a level that, well, we haven't seen from the last quarterback.
Agree.
Unfortunately, that was the franchise guy, and so now we get to a point where I'm as much as I want to put a record on this football
Hmm.
team and seeing where they could potentially be going into this regular season. I don't know. Like for the longest time, I've had their floor at 11 games.
Okay.
11 wins. That is my floor for them. I think if they get 10 or less, it's going to be a disappointment, with
Hmm.
the amount of upgrades that you have done at the position. So I mean, that's just me. Me personally, I think they finish 12-5. They win the division, and I want to at least see them make the NFC Championship game if that's where they're ultimately stopped. Of course, we want them to go to the Super Bowl. When don't we want the
Hmm.
Eagles to go to the Super Bowl? But we got to be
Yeah.
realistic at the same time. So
Yeah.
for me, that's what I ultimately want to see. But training camp is going to answer a lot of those questions, in my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree. My floor for this team is the division. I think if they don't win this division with the
Right.
schedule that they have, I think it's disappointment. I think the ceiling, realistic, is probably, you know, the NFC Championship game. I'm not saying that they're going to win the NFC Championship, but I think they could get there if everything goes right. At best case scenario, I do. But I mean, when you look at the schedule, there's nobody on this schedule that I look at and go, the Eagles can't win that game, or they definitely can't win that game. If you look at Tennessee, I think they could win that game. If you look at the Green Bay game at home, I think it's possible that they could win that game. So I
Right.
think about 11, 12 wins and winning the division, getting a home playoff game, and hopefully winning that play. I think that's a great next step for this team. I think that's realistic. I
It's
do.
fun. It's funny because we opened a little bit in talking about the Dallas Cowboys that were really that were not exactly paying any mind to the Washington Commanders or New York Football
No.
Giants.
Well,
That's pretty humorous.
the Giants, I think, have done a lot of good things. I just think
Yeah.
that it's going to take them a little while to get going. Washington, I think, could be the second best team in the division besides us. A lot of that's going to depend on Carson Wentz, but I mean, Washington's got
Hmm.
some talent. They're getting that defensive line back. I mean, they were banged up last year, so
Yeah.
they get a lot of pieces back. I think Washington could be the second best team in this division, but they're going to go as Carson goes. 1 week Carson looks great, the next 2 weeks he looks horrible, then he looks good for a week or two. So you just don't know.
Right. And I've always had this intrigue with the Giants and what they have done, and really turning the coaching staff around. They bring in
Yeah.
Brian Dable over from Buffalo,
Yep.
and everybody praises him for the work that he did. Alongside other coaches with Josh Allen and
Yeah.
the tremendous improvement that Josh went through for the Bills. And then they bring in Don Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator from the
Right.
Baltimore Ravens. So
Yeah.
you got two high prolific guys in the coaching staff that are trying to they're going to try and switch the culture around a little bit,
Yeah.
in the midst of the Joe Judge years that they
Right.
have unfortunately
Yeah.
had. But it was to our humor,
Yeah.
and our benefit.
Right.
So, if only he
Yeah.
stayed, right? But
Right.
that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
So they have that to look forward to. They were able to get their big guy, their big ticket guy, and Kayvon Thibodeau out of the draft.
Yeah.
But I
Good
but
pick.
I look at the team overall, and I notice that, well, the same problem is still there.
Yeah. Right.
It's
Exactly.
a quarterback driven
Yeah.
league, and Daniel Jones is still that guy right now, who they did
Yeah.
not pick the fifth year
Yeah.
option up.
Right. Which tells you everything you need to know about Daniel Jones. I mean, I think, like I said, I think it's going to take some time for the Giants to
Yeah,
get going. So I don't really, as far as a threat to the division this year, I don't really see them like that. But I think they're taking the right steps. I think maybe
yes,
they'll see better quality play this year from their team, and they'll build off that, I'm sure. But as far as this year goes, no, I think they're a basement team.
sure. And I think we do have to feel Washington is probably a little bit closer, although we we have more than
No,
enough memories of Carson Wentz, and,
right?
well, unfortunately, more bad
I,
times than good times.
yeah.
Because we defended that guy to the death until he couldn't defend
Oh
us anymore
God,
with his play.
right?
But now he gets in a situation where he still has a good head coach in Ron Rivera.
Yeah,
He has some weapons around him with Antonio Gibson. They're getting
yeah,
Logan Thomas back. Terry McLaurin got the bag.
yeah,
They have a promising receiver in Dynamic Brown that they want to bring on the field a lot
right,
more. So he's not exactly missing a whole lot from the Colts, although they don't have a Jonathan Taylor for that
no,
matter. But it's not like he took a dramatic step down in terms of quality from a team basis from
right,
the Colts to Washington.
right,
And you could very well argue that, for as much of a laughing stock as people want to make the NFC East and call it the least, is he looking at this as a more favorable situation for him in from a competitive purpose? Maybe, maybe not. But there's still promise there in what he is capable of with the amount of weapons that he has over in Washington.
right. Yeah, I think Washington. eh, they have a lot of talent, and I think of that defensive side of the ball. I really like their defensive line. So if Carson Wentz, if they get, I'll say it, even if they get the second half of 2019 Carson Wentz, they're going to be good.
Right.
But the thing with Carson over the years has been he's just not consistent. He can look good 2 weeks, look bad the following week. I mean, if you look at Indianapolis, he had 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, which is
Yeah.
pretty good. But then when he went up against the Jaguars to make the playoffs, he stunk.
So I
I mean,
saw it
there's
coming.
got to be something wrong when the owner gives a first round pick and is
Right.
like, this guy has to go.
Right.
That's a red flag. Like, what is going on with this guy that the owner is like, he's got to go. I don't care
And
what we get from him. Just get rid of him.
and an older Matt Ryan, no less. And that's
Right.
not a flack. That's not a flack on Matt Ryan, but
No.
of course from
Right.
an athletic standpoint, Matt's a lot more limited at this point in his career. But
Right.
you look at it from an intangibles standpoint. We've always had this issue with Carson when he was an Eagle, that he just never took the reins and he never took the reins in being a leader. He had an arrogance issue, his way or no way, stuff like that. And, well, I think Indianapolis just didn't want to be in a position of babysitting when they're
Right.
looking for a captain. And
Yeah.
I think that's what ultimately happened, especially when you couldn't rely on said guy in the biggest moments, and you lay a complete egg to a Jacksonville
Yeah.
Jaguars squad that their head coach in Urban Meyer completely imploded. He was
Right.
unreliable. They went through a coaching change at the wrong point, at the wrong time in the year with a rookie quarterback, and he still loses to them.
I know. It's absolutely crazy.
you
It
can't
really is crazy.
you can't paint a more hilarious picture than that. You
No,
really
you
can't.
cannot. Yeah,
So
that was the ultimate choke job.
yeah. Um, Now, of course, the way I like to do touchdown talk is I usually try to keep them at 60 minutes, but well, as it sits, we still got 9 people in the chat, and I remember episode 13 of Touchdown Talk, and I had Joey Shakes on here. We ended up going for like 2.5 hours because the audience was as consistent as they were. But before I let you go, I gotta know your take on if you have any dark horse contenders in terms of training camp, or the most exciting positional groups that you are looking forward to.
Dark
Now
horse.
we can easily pick out receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can easily pick out corner to an extent where you already have a lock in James Bradbury and Big Play Slay. The actual Big Play Slay.
Right.
No slight BPS, you already know.
Right.
Uh, so, I mean, receiver and corner, okay, I think they're the most notable to this point, like, with the players that we got there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I wanted to bring up a while ago that it was right place at the right time. The return of Isaac Sayamalu from his Liz Frank injury, and he makes the
Mm.
positional change from left to right guard because
Right.
he didn't want to be in a position of, well, if it's not broke, well, don't fix it. So they want to maintain a combination of Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson
Oh
on the
yeah, you
left side.
got to. Got to.
The two massive towers over there.
Right.
So you watch Isaac move to the right. It was a good move for the Eagles. The transition of the positional change should be easy for him at this point in his career. He's used to that kind of versatility, as we know with him coming out of college. But I'm looking at me personally. I'm looking at tight end. Um, I'm looking at linebacker overall, and if I can pick one more, it's interesting. It really is. It's kind of hard. I don't want to say safety, but I'm also intrigued at the same time on how they're going to deploy a combination of Anthony Harris and Jaquaski
Mm.
Tartt. Because I also want to see the slot position. Who will ultimately be Avante Maddox's backup there?
That's a great
They have
question.
a lot of they have a lot of faith in a guy in Josiah Scott. Mac McCain is there. Kerry Vincent Jr. could flex over to the slot
Mm-hmm.
spot. We noticed that they bring in guys like Josh Jobe. They give a little bit of guaranteed money to Mario Goodrich. So, I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at it from first to second to third string, the first string is pretty much set. But now we're like, okay, well, how is the rest of the depth going to be set up there? And
I think
there's
Jimmy Moreland's the guy you watch
sure,
for that
yes,
slot
I didn't
corner.
name him either.
Yeah, I think he's a guy, and I know you said no tall corners, but I'm really intrigued by McPherson. Like he
Mm-hmm.
really looked good at times at camp last year. I want to see what kind of jump he makes. Also Cam Jurgens, you're talking about Sayamalo. There's talk that they're going to cross train him some.
Yes.
So would he possibly be able to adjust as well as Dickerson did to left guard, the right guard situation? And would you put him there and then say we can never move this guy again because he's so good? I really liked the Cam Jurgens pick. I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was such a great pick and such a smart pick by the Eagles. I know it wasn't flashy and everybody was looking at Nakobe Dean still on the board, but I thought it was a really, really good pick.
I
And
don't want to. I don't want to think of a universe in which Cam Jurgens unfortunately doesn't work at center because you got Jason Kelsey walking into the
right,
sunset after this year,
I
and
know.
then that's all that's really behind him is
Yeah,
Cam Jurgens,
yeah.
the
Well, they
guy that
brought in
he
Landon.
handpicked.
They brought in Landon Dickerson at first to play center,
Yeah,
and then
and now
they
you're
moved
and
to
now
left
you're
guard. And
stuck with
now you can't ever move him. He's too dominant with Mulatto on that side. You
now
just
you're
can't
stuck
move
with
him.
that. So
Yeah,
it's I mean the only other notable is Isaac Sayamalu, who
yeah,
flat out came out of college as a center.
yeah. Right.
So he has that versatility too. But
Yeah,
now he's going to be on the back half
yeah,
of his career, coming off of that Liz Frank injury, and
yeah.
yeah, let's stay in the present first. I don't want to think about that. Cam
Okay.
Jurgens has to work out, plain and simple.
Right,
that's
right.
that's what it
That's
has
true.
to be. I mean,
It does. Yeah.
if and I coined the phrase, if our Lord and Center Jason Kelsey handpicked this guy, he's got to work. Like
It's got to work.
who were the other? He selected him over guys like Linderbaum. He
Right.
thought that Cam Jurgens was, that he was the guy he wanted over Linderbaum
Yeah.
and a couple other linemen that are
Yeah.
not hitting me right now. But just
Yeah.
understand, he was the guy Jason Kelsey wanted. So you're looking at that, and he almost has to work at center. But
Yeah.
in Stout we trust, and
Yeah.
in Kelsey we trust. So I'm
Absolutely.
not worried, but yeah, I'm gonna stay in the present with that first. Um,
Yeah.
and then I will briefly touch on tight end too, because that was also a position that you were very intrigued about because
Yeah.
you're not completely sold on Jack Stoll, and
No.
respectfully so, him being undrafted out of Nebraska, and the biggest thing with
Right.
him was his blocking ability.
Yeah.
So if we're in a situation where if we have to ask Dallas to block, as stupid as that may sound sometimes, where where he's the best pass catching tight end on your roster, you're in a situation to where Tyree Jackson's going to start on the pup list. You
Right.
got Arthega Whiteside. Noah Togiai is still here. Take of that what you will. Richard Rogers is still here. Again, take of that what you will.
Right.
And then you got the sixth round selection in Grant Calcaterra, who is yet another Jalen Hurts type of connection. They've known
Right.
each other from Oklahoma. So, I mean, most teams in the NFL usually keep three tight ends. We have seen the Eagles do that, for how many years now. Uh, it's tough to me, but as far as I look at it, I'm still in good faith with Jack Stoll, but I ultimately feel that he is going to be. I think he is going to be in a swap with the second tight end spot between him and Calcaterra.
Yeah.
And my next guy behind those two would probably be Tyree Jackson. As much of a claim that I wanted to try and make on Umbrella Man and justifying a spot for him, I
Right.
still I still didn't
Right.
pick him at the end of the day.
Right.
So I think that would be my three ultimately.
Yeah.
So
I would probably agree with that as of right now. I think Tyree Jackson's a stash candidate. I think you find a way to put him back on IR and you just let him sit and I would just let him sit all year and then give him a chance the following season to win a job because he's raw.
right,
He's got a lot of talent. And to me, there's no reason to rush him back from injury. Um, Calcaterra, I guess, is the guy I'm hoping is going to win that job. But we'll see. I definitely think that the second tight end position is an open is up for grabs. So it's going to be a very interesting watch. It's a very interesting position. The other position I'll say on offense too is I still think you need another running back. You have
hmm
Miles, Gainwell, and Ball Scott all kind of similar. Who's your big short yardage back? Who's your goal line back? Kid Brooks from Oklahoma, don't know enough about him. He hasn't played a snap yet. So do
Right.
they bring back a Jordan Howard at some point? I like Jordan Howard, can never stay healthy, you know? So what are they going to do? I think that is another area in which I think something could happen during camp.
I had to mute quick. I don't like I don't like coughing right in the right in the middle of stuff. I try to mute
Oh,
as much as
no,
I
I
can.
understand.
But
No, it's good.
as soon as I see as you drop talking about Jordan Howard, I'm like, So I'm not alone because I've been silently advocating for the Eagles to bring him back. I mean, the contributions that he was able to make on such a on such a short snap count or like that kind of rare basis is it's sometimes too it's sometimes too hard to avoid
Right,
in terms of what he brings. And yes, I know there's people that are excited about Kennedy Brooks' potential. But again, how often do we see undrafted free agent rookies, work out the way we want them to? And
right,
that's no slight on a guy and what I'm gonna feel like crap if I Corey Clement. It's no slight on guys like that. He became such a massive part of that Super Bowl in that 2017 run. Now, is
right.
it is are those kind of instances repeatable? They absolutely can. But I don't know. I want to go with the I want to go with the position that the proven. I want to have that guarantee first. And I want to see a guy like Kennedy Brooks develop before
Right,
I throw his feet to the fire.
right.
I get it. There's
I get it.
excitement there, but that's the position I'm in right now.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I'm still ashamed that we have to talk about running back the way we are because
right.
of where Miles Sanders has been to this point. And I completely I'm completely okay with the excitement that he has in
Yeah,
calling this team feeling that we have an all-star kind of a team.
me too.
He came in as a rookie in 2019 and watched all the up and downs and the inconsistencies of where the team has been. And then finally when we see some stability from a skill perspective and looking at this name and that name and all across the board, that it kind of gets overwhelming. Like
It
you
does.
feel that something special can happen.
Yeah.
But to still call him the number one right now, there's a little bit of a fear there.
Yeah.
Because I personally need him to stay healthy
Right.
before I see any kind of contributions. He's got to stay healthy for me first. Like
Right.
it doesn't matter what you do on a game to game basis if the team is in fear of you getting hurt because you're not going to
Right.
be on the field to do your job anymore.
I know.
So I mean that's where I'm at with Miles. I
Yeah.
love him. He's easy to root for, but you're not you're not worth anything if you're not playing. And
You gotta play.
that's my biggest thing
and
for him.
and that's the one hiccup I have with bringing back Jordan Howard, because if you
Right.
have Miles who gets hurt and then Jordan Howard's getting stingers and he's out 7 to 8 weeks, it kills you, But you're exactly right about Miles Sanders. I mean, Miles had no touchdowns last year, but he still averaged 5.5 yards a carry, I believe, last year. When
Yeah.
he plays, he's good, but he has to be on the field. Otherwise, it doesn't help you. And I think we're going to see a lot of Kenneth Gainwell this year too. So would I say Miles is the number one back? I think they're going to rotate those guys in. I really do.
I got curious on this statistic and it just makes it even worse for Miles.
What
Jordan
was that?
Howard Jordan Howard played only 7 games. Miles played 12 to his credit, but again, he missed what? We'll call it 4 since the Eagles didn't play any of their first stringers in the last
Right.
game against Dallas, and the Cowboys wanted to throw a party on us and feel all good
Right.
about themselves before their
Yeah.
their inevitable loss in the playoffs that they've been used to, but that's not
Yeah. Oh,
that's not the here nor there right now.
choke season.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is the scary part. Jordan Howard played 7 games. He had 3 touchdowns. He had
Mhm.
3. Miles had a big fat 0.
I know. 0 touchdowns. Very bizarre.
0.
You know. You
And
know
Jordan
what?
played.
I've seen that before though in the NFL where you get a receiver has like 0 touchdowns or 1
Yes.
touchdown too, and then the following year they get a bunch of them. So maybe it'll come. You know, maybe it'll come this year. I'll have 10. Who knows? But I mean, guy, I think he still averaged 5. I think it was 5.5 yards a carry.
Yeah.
It's not bad. I mean, you got a running
There's
back averaging 5.5 yards a carry. I think
uh
you got to feed him. I think we can't be worried about Miles getting hurt.
yeah.
We got to feed him, and if he gets hurt, he gets hurt.
Miles was 5.5. His longest was 38. Boston Scott was 4.3. Jordan Howard was 4.7, and Kenny Gainwell was 4.3. So
That's really good.
I mean, from a depth perspective, when you got
That's really
4
good.
guys that are averaging over, 4 to 4.5 yards
Right?
per carry, that's excellent
Yeah, that's great.
contribution. And that
Yeah.
that excludes the quarterback. Jalen Hurts averaged 5.6
Right.
on
Yeah.
9
That's
attempts.
really good. Yeah, that's
That's
really good.
that's pretty good. That was better than Miles, who averaged 5.5 on 11, and
Right.
we thought 11 wasn't enough for him. So,
Right.
yeah, it's I, I'm I don't know. I don't want to be worried about the running back position, but at the same time, it's just an outlier to the idea that we're hoping that the team throws the football more and
Yeah.
instilling that trust in Jalen Hurts and improving in the fundamentals that he is
Absolutely.
supposed to. To which, in terms of that, I will say this to cap it off. I think we need to eliminate the misconception on Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, to where people want to say that he's got a noodle arm, he has no velocity on his throws, this, that,
Yeah.
and the third. For me, it has never been that. To me, it's been timing and anticipation in the structure of the offense. Now,
Right.
granted, when you look at Carson Wentz, the previous quarterback, well, he was able to throw receivers open because he would just toss a bullet at somebody and hope to
Right.
catch it. To
Right.
whereas, okay, well, we need to see Jalen Hurts in those same situations where, okay, well, he needs to be a little bit ahead of the receiver and throw him open in that regard,
Right.
instead of throwing something at a wall and hoping it sticks.
Right.
They're just 2 totally different quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts is not
Right.
the prototypical type of quarterback. He doesn't have the arm strength that a Carson Wentz does, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't make some, if not half of those throws that Carson was able to do. So
Right.
for me, it just comes down to his timing in the offense.
Yep.
A better dissection and understanding defensive coverages, and putting that trust in your receivers to
Right.
be where they're supposed to. Because unfortunately, again, there was still those miscommunications, to where I think it was there was notable ones last year in 2020 where I remember a play where Jalen Rager had no idea where he was supposed to be, and everyone was immediately blaming Wentz, and well, somebody ended up running the wrong route. And there was still instances of that this year, or last year, but to just a lesser degree. So, as a whole, if that comes together, and you just work on Jalen Hurts in structure, and going through his reads and progressions, then I think that's where most of the improvement is going to be
I
seen.
think
It's
so.
not about arm
Yeah.
strength as a whole.
No, listen. There's a lot of players that have played in this league that didn't have the greatest arm strength, but you got to be accurate. When you don't
Yes.
have it, you have to be accurate. So I think his mechanics are going to be important. I think, like you said, you got to be able to throw guys open. Um, and I want to, like I said, my big problem with him last year was I just thought he bailed out too quick. A lot of
Yeah.
times he just bailed to his right. I think he's got to stick in there and look at his other reads, and I think with guys like AJ Brown, I think that they can help him out a lot. If it's not an accurate throw, they can go up and they can make plays. So I think the whole noodle arm is kind of ridiculous. I think he has good enough arm strength. It's not Josh Allen, it's not Patrick
No,
Mahomes, but
right.
it doesn't have to be, But his fundamentals, his mechanics, his accuracy, all that has to be better. And that's what we're going to find out about this year. There's no excuse for Jalen Hurts. The Eagles went
Nope.
out and gave him everything he needs to succeed. Now he just has to go do it.
Absolutely. And I will leave it on a final note with this. If Carson was able to, back in 2017, if he was able to be in MVP type of conversations up until he was injured, if he was able to be in those conversations with having a completion percentage of just over 60%, then Jalen Hurts is going to be just fine. Because Jalen Hurts last year had a
Right.
better completion percentage in 15 games than Carson Wentz did in his MVP S type of year in 13 games. Now,
Yeah.
granted, there's a lot more, there's a lot more notes that you can take out of that. And again, I'm looking at it from a surface level. Sure, because it all depends on how many passes you have attempted, and I don't have the hard notes in front of me right now.
Right.
But that's my thing. You want to, if people want to make completion percentage that big of a deal, you know, I didn't hear anybody up in arms about it when Carson was destroying almost every team in the league. But
Right.
of course, he had a reputable defense behind him. He had a run game, this, that, and the third. Well, you can arguably say that Jalen Hurts is in almost a similar situation right now, and that's the
Yep.
biggest thing that we're hoping for. Aside from his improvement, is the improvement of the team overall, including the coaching staff.
Yep. Totally agree.
Well,
I
I don't
totally agree.
mean unfortunately, I don't mean to cut ties short, but obviously we can't go forever with this sort of thing, especially in a time where things are still kind of quiet right now. Just
Yep.
approaching an hour and a half, and we already know from the start of this coming week and going into next week, everybody's going to be on training camp watch. There,
Yep.
I can't tell you how excited I am 500, but
I
I have
know.
to say I was just as excited for this episode of Touchdown Talk, and
Oh,
I think it went pretty damn well for
absolutely.
my first formal stream. And working with you, it was a fantastic experience, man. And I just want to thank you once again for
Oh,
taking on the taking on my request to get a
oh
stream
no.
going.
I appreciate you having me on. I had a blast. It was a lot of fun, and anytime you want to do it, I'm open to do it again. But thank you.
Well, at least I can now say that I have had both members of the Philly Shakedown
There you
podcast on
go.
my on my
That's
channel.
right.
Like you,
There you go.
you guys
Absolutely.
kill it. You guys kill it every single time. Joey's a good guy, and
Yeah,
and
he is.
and
Thank you.
and now to have the two of you, it's it's amazing. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
wanted to thank you once again, and thank you to everybody that has made it possible up to this point. Still 10 viewers in the chat. 17 episodes in of Touchdown Talk, and having a different content creator for every single one. It's not exactly easy to do, but that comes down to the audience. That comes down to other content creators that are willing to work with me, and I'm deeply appreciative of everything. So to close this out again, if you just so happen to have no idea who Philly.500 is, and I don't know how the hell that's possible, but again, his channel link is in the description of this stream. Give him the support he deserves. If you have not subscribed to this point, there's a notification bell, there's likes, everything is completely free. Even the content itself, the entertainment itself is absolutely free. The personality and everything else that comes with it. So do the due diligence, give them the support, and
Thank you.
that is going to conclude it for this episode of Touchdown Talk, episode 17, with King Dingbat himself and Philly.500. I wanted to thank you to everybody that has come out for this presentation. Any final says before we head out, 500?
Just thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's going to be a fun season. This is going to be one of the funner seasons I think that we've had in a long time. So buckle up, because it's going to be fun.
Oh man, I can't imagine how busy we are going to be in dissecting the amount of players, the amount of exciting players that we have to look forward to, and look how good Hassan Reddick looked, or Fletcher Cox, or Jordan Davis, and just the list just goes on and on.
Yeah.
Man, there's so much to look forward to, and
I know.
We're guys like us are going to be with y'all every step of the way, and giving the best opinions that we possibly can to steer everybody in the right direction. So for myself and 500, thank you again for coming to episode 17 of Touchdown Talk. That is it. Flag goes fly, bleed green. You already know the deal with Lindy Endzone here. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Have a good night, and I will see you next time.